Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Star Wars Rebels episode review. This one's for Season 3, Episode 15, Trials of the Darksaber. Really good episode of Star Wars Rebels. I kind of knew I was going to like this one because it was focused on like training and lightsaber combat, which is a huge part of why I like Star Wars so much. So I knew going in that I think it was going to be at least a somewhat enjoyable episode, but I came out of it really liking it because it delivered on that front. We got the lightsaber stuff, a lot of lightsaber choreography stuff, really well animated stuff as well. And that to me fit in with what we kind of know about some of the forms, even though they don't mention the forms by like name or even number. We still got a lot of focus on it. But I think what really surprised me was that I think really have set up a good Sabine character arc. They've referenced and tried to do stuff before with Sabine, but it's always just been like, oh, that's a tiny little fact. Like, is there any notable thing to that? Like, there was a character Ketsu that they introduced back into things, and I was like, okay, fine. But now, like, just really going in depth in terms of her family, that they're setting up Sabine is going to try and make a difference within Mandalore and try and get the Mandalorians on the side of the rebellion by uniting them under Sabine with the Darksaber. It just seems like a really good arc to kind of put her on, to kind of really get things going. So yeah, she's definitely one of the more underdeveloped characters within the show, so it was something they needed to do to really make the episode work, and I think they got it right. So let's start off with talking about the lightsaber training. It comes into play because obviously we get the reveal that Sabine took the Darksaber but immediately gave it to Kanan to like hold on to. That it kind of highlighted this thing throughout the episode, that Sabine knows the Darksaber is important because it relates to her family. As Fenrau explains, that there was once a member of the Vizsla clan who was a Jedi, the first ever Mandalorian Jedi, who was the one who made the Darksaber in the first place, and that's why it's so important, and that like there's somewhat of a claim for the Vizsla clan to actually have the Darksaber, and it wasn't just, oh, they stole an old lightsaber from the Jedi Order, that it is actually, you know, go back in time, related to Clan Vizsla at its heart. So Sabine having the lightsaber here isn't just that, oh, she's using a Jedi weapon, she's using a weapon from a Jedi that is initially from her clan. So I like that little bit of history. I like the way they did it in the kind of the different kind of animation style, just to kind of, without going full on flashback, they kind of used it to show it to some degree. So I think there's still more detail to go into with that backstory, but it was nice what we did get. They often don't even attempt to showcase any sort of stuff like that. So showing like a Mandalorian Jedi from all that time ago is interesting. But they set up immediately that Sabine doesn't seem to want to take on the responsibility of being the one to kind of unite the clans and kind of get the Mandalore as part of the rebellion. And the question throughout the episode is why? Why is she kind of holding back? What isn't she saying to everyone? And I like that as the episode goes on, like you have, I think both Hera and Kanan both acknowledge the fact that Sabine is usually quite like expressive, like with her art and stuff like that. A lot of the time she's the one cracking jokes, but at the same time she's also the one who actually holds back the most in terms of her emotions. She never actually displays her emotions all that much. She kind of jokes and does a lot of that stuff, but she never talks about her past or anything like that. So I like that this episode was the one where they were finally going to kind of challenge Sabine and have that come out and kind of see how she would deal with that. So I really appreciate them kind of going for that here. And you know, they agreed to finally start her training. She reluctantly agrees, and I like the scene of just Kanan holding onto the Darksaber, her grabbing it and kind of wanting to just get out of the situation. She's like, fine, I'll take it and go. But it isn't until she like accepts it properly that she kind of looks at him and says, I'll take it and I will do it. That he fully lets go of it and is kind of accepting of it. And you know, he starts her off with the training sabers, and that he knows she's skilled, and I think to some extent Kanan knows that she can use melee weaponry and can use a sword okay. But as he says pretty soon once he sees her skills, that's fine against a stormtrooper, but come up against a Jedi or anyone who is a skilled swordsman and you're going to struggle with that form. So he has Ezra teach her the basics of the forms of lightsaber combat. Now, I do wish the episode had gone into a little bit of detail in terms of establishing like what forms she is being taught, and like mention the numbers of the forms, mention the names of the forms, something like that. In that we see Kanan at certain points of the episode use Makashi. I think it's pretty clear that the basics that they're teaching her are like Shicho Form 1. And, you know, as I said, Makashi, you know, the fencing form. Kanan a lot of the time is dueling her with only using one hand, the other hand behind the back. That is kind of very, very much Count Dooku style of like Makashi. So I like that. I just wish they had, like, for the people who are really into lightsaber combat, just referenced them a little bit. Because we haven't really ever had like a full-on canon mention of the forms all that much. I think the Inquisitor mentions Form 3 at some point back in Season 1, but doesn't mention that it's Sarizu or anything like that. So there's that. Like I think like if they were to teach Sabine a style and like name it, it makes sense that it would be something like a Makashi or a Shien or something like that. One of the forms that would suit the fact that she's also going to use like Mandalorian weaponry and so on. But you can see that she becomes very frustrated as the kind of episode progresses, and that like Ezra is kind of more skilled than her, which is an experience she's not very used to. She's used to being like kind of higher up in the rank of the rebels and kind of usually more skilled in a lot of ways than Ezra. So to just kind of have this situation where like Ezra's just a better swordsman than she is at this stage was interesting, and to kind of have her kind of be challenged in that way, and that she gets very aggressive in fights. We see that she overextends herself, and that's her kind of biggest weakness. That even when Fenrau gives her the kind of extra Mandalorian equipment, the gauntlets, to give her somewhat of more of an advantage, I like that Kanan was kind of like, no, like introduce tricks later on, sure, use everything you have, but you have to establish a core of being a good swordsman first. And I like that that's the point at which he broke out of using the training sabers into using the actual sabers. That she kind of got a little bit ahead of herself. That like, oh, I don't have to be the best swordsman. I can just use my Mandalorian equipment and defend off some attacks with my lightsaber, and I can win. And she wraps up Kanan, and he's just like force power, lightsaber on, I'm out of it. You'd be dead if this was a real fight. Kind of establishing that like when the Jedi fought the Mandalorians, the Jedi won. There's a reason for that. That you have to be a good swordsman as well. You can't just rely on the fancy equipment. And I really did like that point, that like he was quite serious, to the point of like, whoa, that's very harsh. But it worked. It was something that she needed to hear at that point in time. And then I like that she kind of that they had kind of Sabine storm off to just kind of think and reflect about what's going on. She still isn't opening up, which led to one of the only parts of the episode where I wasn't fully happy with, and that was the Kanan and Hera conversation. The only problem I had with it is just that I don't think Hera is in any way an authority on when Sabine should or should not use a lightsaber. Hera, of all of the characters, is the one we've seen least in combat outside of ships. So I don't think she should be the one to be judging when someone can't use a lightsaber, when Kanan, who is a knighted Jedi Knight at this stage, wouldn't he wouldn't quite be a master, but he's a powerful Jedi Knight who knows how to use a lightsaber, who has trained Ezra to use a lightsaber, to suddenly start introducing someone to the idea of a sword by giving them a lightsaber immediately, and a lightsaber that like we assume only has one setting because it's so old that there's no low power setting where it doesn't cut your arms off if it touches you. I understood why Kanan was being so kind of cautious with her, because he knew that she was holding back and not kind of giving everything, and that there was the potential for maybe when that finally came out that she could hurt someone. And so, I understood why he was being so cautious. At the same time, I understand what Hera was trying to say, but I felt like she could have said it in a different way that wasn't so like against what Kanan, who is the actual master of a lightsaber, what he was saying. But just the idea that, like, for her to get to the position where we all want her to be in, you have to have her own her weapon, and that involves using it. So, they had one episode to get her pretty advanced in terms of lightsaber combat, and the episode did a good job, but you can tell that there was parts where they had to kind of really accelerate it at kind of unnatural rates. But she comes back, he gives her the lightsaber, and we get some really nice training duels as he kind of initially is just kind of explaining to her that like a lightsaber is different. Immediately she just turns it on and it's like, whoa, like this is different, like it feels more heavy than I expected. And he has to kind of tell her like don't think of it as just like a standard physical weapon, that what you are doing is you are swinging around like a pulse of energy basically. It's constantly kind of alive, that there's more to this. It's dangerous, that one touch and you could lose a hand. It's not the case of like you need to put in a massive amount of force to injure someone. Just its very existence is danger, and you have to connect with the weapon to be able to use it effectively. And then when he slows it down the first couple of times, they don't just immediately go into sparring. He's like, block high. They have the first clash of blades, and it's like, did you feel that? Like, they kind of locked together. They wanted to kind of touch each other. You see the energy very emphasized here. So I thought that was really, really well done. Getting her used to the idea of what like a saber clash actually is like, and how it's different than normal weapons clashing. And inevitably him just kind of challenging her, like knocking her over, like not really holding back as they go on. And him kind of frustrating her and forcing the emotion out of her and kind of like questioning, like, you ran away from your clan, didn't you? And is that why you're holding back from wanting to go back and see them again? And we get probably the most important section of the episode. Sabine finally talking about what happened with her parents and her clan in general. She reveals she has a brother, and that, as far as we're aware, her mother and father are still alive. And what happened here was that she made weapons for the Empire, and the Empire used it against Mandalore to take over. And she feels guilty for that, and the idea is that she basically spoke out against what was happening here, but no one kind of stood up beside her to support her. So she was kind of abandoned at this moment, and in her mind she sacrificed herself basically to kind of save her clan in that moment of like, I suppose to some degree so I suppose what happened here was that she turned all the anger of the Empire against just her, which potentially took it away from like her family being like killed or something like that. That as far as she's aware, like her family is the problem, that they didn't step up to fight back against the Empire and do the right thing. That she was just left on her own to have to leave. That she was basically forced to leave. It wasn't that she necessarily ran away. But since then, she has kind of ran away from like addressing what's actually happening here. So immediately it presents the idea that this is going to be a very, very important confrontation when it eventually happens. Now, my thoughts, you all probably know my thoughts if you've watched any of my reviews. I want a flashback to see that happening. It's fine that Sabine talked about it and like said a decent amount of lines covering what happened. But I think this situation seems complicated enough. You should show that flashback and what exactly happened. And I don't think they can build on it enough to really make it a big, powerful moment unless we know exactly what happened in that scene. Not everyone's going to agree with me on that, but I think they kind of have to. And I'll be disappointed if they don't address what happened in the past more clearly. To make her finally meeting with her parents all the more impactful. So yeah, I'm excited for what happens next. Sabine seems reasonably skilled now with a lightsaber, but obviously nowhere near an expert. But I think she could handle herself okay in a fight, and I'm excited to see what they do. So I was very pleased with this episode. I liked what they did. They even had a nice kind of Sabine and Ezra scene where he kind of pointed out to her that like, at least you still have a family to kind of go back to and talk to. That it may seem bad that they're alive, but maybe you can't go back to them, but like, at least you have them. Like, my parents are gone and I'm still trying. You at the very least should use the fact that they're still alive and try. So a lot of nice little moments. Kanan was great in the episode. Sabine was great. We learned so much more about her. Ezra was good. Fen Rao was good. We got some backstory with the first Mandalorian Jedi. We got some great lightsaber combat stuff. The animation was really good, especially the Sabine Ezra sparring duel. I thought that was really well animated. But yeah, that's been the review. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on the episode. But that's been the review. Thanks for watching, and bye.